Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Here are today's top stories. Dream vacation turned nightmare. 7,000 people are trapped on board a cruise liner in Italy. Doctors are testing a couple on board for the deadly coronavirus. The coronavirus continues to affect air travel to and from China, but that's not all. International businesses and fast food chains are also temporarily closing their doors. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo meets with the British Foreign Secretary in London. He raises U.S. concerns about trade, Huawei, and what he called the central threat of our times. And the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol has discovered the longest drug smuggling tunnel ever in the southeastern U.S. It runs between California and Mexico. The deadly coronavirus continues to spread around the world. No confirmed cases in Italy so far, but as we speak, passengers are quarantined aboard an Italian cruise ship. Health officials fear that a Chinese couple on board may be carrying the virus. They've said that for now, no one is allowed to leave.
A dream cruise turning into a nightmare today. 6,000 passengers remain trapped on board a ship in Italy. Doctors testing 2 Chinese nationals for the highly contagious coronavirus. The couple joined the cruise on Sunday after flying from the Chinese region of Macau to Milan. From there, they visited France and Spain before returning to Italy, where they are now docked. The 54-year-old female passenger reported a fever and breathing problems, 2 symptoms of the coronavirus. Her husband is not ill, but both are now being kept in isolation on the ship. Medical test results are due back Thursday. The Italian Prime Minister says his government is not worried but vigilant and cautious. Likewise, the mayor of the city where the ship is docked says the situation is under control. The couple are reportedly from Hong Kong, a high-risk area for infection. Chinese people have been trying to escape the virus this week by fleeing there. No one is allowed to leave the ship until further notice.
In response to the virus, airlines are suspending flights to and from China, and major fast food chains and retailers in China are shutting their doors.
Major U.S. carriers American Airlines and United Airlines announced they have suspended some flights to China in response to the coronavirus outbreak.
It's obviously an unexpected event, but airlines tend to respond to things fairly quickly. And what they've done is just really as simple as cutting flying to places where conditions mean that they will make significant cash losses on the flying.
One passenger from Malaysia says that he understands the strict travel measurements, but is not too concerned of contracting the virus.
Just a very good precaution that they start having this option, because to me, I'm not too worried about coronavirus. As long as you get your body immune system up, I don't see it as being so deadly as SARS. So I don't think the panic is warranted, but its precautionary measures will be important.
In Europe, the German airline Lufthansa is suspending its own Swiss and Austrian airline flights to and from China until February. Lufthansa said in a statement it would continue to fly to Hong Kong, but would stop taking bookings for flights to mainland China until the end of February. On Thursday, Taiwan's Health and Welfare Minister Chen Shih-chung announced the country's 9th confirmed case of coronavirus. The same day, both India and Philippines confirmed their first case. Companies in China are temporarily closing stores. Major companies outside of China are restricting employee travel into the country. The slowdown of business in China will have a financial impact. Alphabet Inc.'s Google is temporarily shutting down all its offices in mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan due to the outbreak. McDonald's and Starbucks were among the earliest closures, announcing on Friday that they had closed select locations in China to prevent the spread of the virus among employees and customers. Large companies like IKEA and Gap are also temporarily closed. According to Bloomberg, major tourist attractions, including the Shanghai Disney Resort, has also temporarily shut down.
A group of healthcare workers in Hong Kong are planning a strike. They're urging the government to do more to protect Hong Kongers from the virus.
According to the HA Employees Alliance, over 16,000 people, mostly healthcare workers, plan to join the strike on February 5th. They say authorities aren't doing enough to protect them from the coronavirus. This despite Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam already announcing the closure of high-speed trains and ferries, halting of half of all flights from China to Hong Kong, and suspending travel permits for mainland Chinese. The order will go into effect at midnight on Thursday. Workers are demanding that the government completely close Hong Kong's border with China and provide safety gear and infrastructure for handling suspected cases of the virus.
We don't have enough isolation area for the suspected case for the new coronavirus happening in China. And this is putting everyone in the hospital, even most people in the ward area at risk for the high risk of infection.
Queues have appeared at pharmacies around the city as panicking residents rush to buy more surgical masks amid shortening supplies. The death toll and number of infected patients inside China is believed to be much larger than the regime has let on.
What have the Chinese authorities done to prevent the virus from spreading? One doctor from New York went to China to find out for himself.
To see what the coronavirus outbreak really looks like, Dr. Rajiv Fernando took a one-day trip to Wuhan, China, where it all began. He traveled on January 17th, more than a month since the deadly virus had started spreading there. As an infectious disease expert, what he saw was surprising and alarming.
And I saw about 10% of the population wearing masks. So it was just not that much, and it didn't make any sense to me. If those people knew there's an active outbreak that's going on, people would have been more precautioned. They would have worn more masks.
He said the lack of precaution could result from authorities underreporting cases at the time.
When you have an outbreak, cases are multiplying every day, more and more cases. And the authorities over there were saying that there aren't any new cases for a whole week. And that got me very suspicious. My concern, and as a result of this, I thought there was no transparency with the people.
He also questioned the effectiveness of China's lockdown measures. Chinese authorities has now put tens of millions of people under quarantine.
By locking everyone down, say even the people who are not infected, who are healthy, they are forced to be with infected people and they get infected. I think the Chinese, the politicians were under a lot of pressure to do something quickly because, like I said, they hadn't reported a case in a week. People were just going on as business as usual, and suddenly they say, well, we have 500 cases overnight or 1,000 cases the next day. And people obviously are panicky and, quite frankly, upset with the government to say, why have you delayed this?
When Fernando left Wuhan, he noticed how easily potentially infected patients could have left the city and headed for other places in the world.
When I got to the airport, for example, where the local authorities said that there was abundance of screening at the airports, and I walked in and there really was nothing. There was no screening whatsoever.
He flew to Hong Kong. Once he arrived, the situation was totally different.
As soon as I got off the flight, there were like 3 or 4 people right on top of me, checking my temperature, checking everyone's temperature. It was very aggressive. And that upset me that, it was sort of like, China was not checking people aggressively to actually, if they were infected, to stop them from flying. So that was a big concern for me.
He expects many more cases to emerge. With that, he said data transparency and the global effort are the most important. Penny Zhou, NTD News, New York.
The Australian government is defending its plans to quarantine citizens rescued from Wuhan, China, where the epidemic began. The government plans to send them to a small nearby island and a facility built to house asylum seekers, waiting for their papers to be processed.
Standing Order 40.
The Australian government has defended plans to quarantine citizens on Christmas Island that are evacuated from the coronavirus hit area around Wuhan, China. The island off Australia's north coast is home to a controversial immigration detention centre that was recently reopened after being shuttered for about a decade. Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton said that Christmas Island is the only facility available where they can accommodate a potentially large number of people.
The reality is that people need to be accommodated somewhere for up to 14 days. I can't clear out a hospital in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane. I don't have a facility otherwise that we can quickly accommodate for what might be many hundreds of people, and Christmas Island is purpose-built for exactly this scenario.
The government is still waiting to confirm how many of the 600 Australians in China's Hubei region they will be able to evacuate. The centre currently only houses one family of 4 Tamil asylum seekers. Dutton says the evacuees won't be using the medical centre or other common areas, but they will remain restricted to an isolation area.
Mike Pompeo spoke about the historic relationship between the U.S. and UK today. He said the two countries were allies against the threat of the Chinese communist regime, despite a current disagreement over Huawei.
The Chinese Communist Party presents the central threat of our times.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke on the future of the U.S. and post-Brexit Britain's relationship at an event on Thursday. He said the U.S. and its allies must ensure they have the military and technological power to defend Western principles, which he says are under threat from the Chinese regime. Attention turned to Britain's decision to allow China's Huawei a role in its communication network. Pompeo and President Trump had been lobbying the UK to exclude the firm on security grounds. Pompeo made it clear that U.S. concerns over Huawei had not changed.
You have senior leaders in these companies that are tied to the Chinese Communist Party. We think that it's not about a technical back door. They have the front door.
He said the U.S. will make sure their own systems are guided and bound by the central ideas of freedom, transparency, and security. Pompeo also spoke with British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab about an upcoming trade deal between the U.S. and the U.K. once Britain leaves the European Union. Britain is set to leave the EU on Friday. Raab said U.S. support gave Britain a boost of confidence. Pompeo also said he hoped the U.S. and UK will work together on the issues that matter, like global human rights.
Questions and answers continue on the Senate floor today. This new phase began yesterday, with senators presenting their questions to President Trump's legal team and the House managers.
Please address the President's counsel's argument that House managers seek to overturn the results of the 2016 election.
On Wednesday, lead House impeachment manager Adam Schiff defended the House Democrats' impeachment of President Trump. He said the founders of the Constitution included the clause of impeachment to protect the country from a president that commits high crimes and misdemeanors. The dispute remains over whether the president's actions constitute high crimes and misdemeanors. President Trump's defense team have said the heart of the matter is House Democrats' disapproval of the president's actions on a foreign policy, which House managers say were for his personal interest. Defense attorney Alan Dershowitz said that a decision based on national interest, even if it also includes personal interest, cannot be called a corrupt motive.
But for it to be impeachable, you would have to discern that he or she made a decision solely on the basis of, as the House managers put it, corrupt motives.
The topic of witnesses has come up again and again in the trial. Democrat Senator Tim Kaine and Democrat Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer both said that the Senate's trial without witnesses would be a sham. But Republican Senator Cory Gardner said they had already heard from 17 witnesses during the House's impeachment inquiry. He said additional witnesses were not necessary. White House counsel Jay Sekulow said that if more witnesses were included, he would call House impeachment manager Adam Schiff, the Bidens, and the unknown whistleblower who triggered the inquiry. A vote on whether to call more witnesses is expected on Friday. Dershowitz said witnesses are irrelevant as the charges against the president do not amount to an impeachable offense. If more witnesses were called, the trial could continue for months.
Up next, a California university wins a $1.1 billion patent lawsuit against Apple and chipmaker Broadcom. More on that when we return.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
In China, something can be illegal, but still in common practice. For example, bribery, or intellectual property theft, or Uber.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people and counting. I'm a little freaked out that many people have seen my face. Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? It's starring me.
It's more and more obvious that China is having a major influence on the U.S.
Hey, have you heard of China Uncensored? 中国揭秘. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the only show on TV or the internet. It will be the sole source of edutainment worldwide. Have you heard of China Uncensored?
Yeah, I have.
You actually have? He's heard of China Uncensored.
I love China Uncensored.
A research university in California says it won a $1.1 billion jury verdict in a patent case against Apple and Broadcom.
Research University Caltech, California Institute of Technology, said on Wednesday it won $837.8 million from Apple and $270.2 million from Broadcom in a patent case against Apple and Broadcom. Caltech said Broadcom Wi-Fi chips used in hundreds of millions of Apple iPhones infringed patents. Apple said it was only passively implicated and pointed to the use of Broadcom's chips in its devices. Broadcom is a major Apple supplier and got about a fifth of its sales from the iPhone maker in the last financial year. Last week, Broadcom said it had signed deals to sell as much as $15 billion worth of chips to Apple. Apple said it plans to appeal the verdict, but declined further comment. Broadcom did not respond immediately to a request for comment.
U.S. Customs and Border Patrol officials say they have found a sophisticated drug smuggling tunnel in California that stretches over 3/4 of a mile. That makes it the longest on record. The tunnel is more than 4,300 feet long. It extends a 1/4 mile into the U.S. to San Diego and a 1/2 mile into Mexico to Tijuana. Inside, the tunnel is around 5.5 feet tall and 2 feet wide. Officials say the tunnel has a ventilation system, electricity, and elevators at both entrances. No arrests have been made in connection with the tunnel's discovery. NBC Universal was fined $15 million by the European Union today for illegally restricting sales of merchandise linked to films such as Minions. The EU is cracking down on companies that block cross-border online trade.
The European Union fined NBC Universal $15 million on Thursday for illegally restricting sales of merchandise linked to some films. The European Commission's investigation into the Comcast subsidy and other companies started in 2017. Before that, it looked into thousands of companies' e-commerce and cross-border practices in Europe. The EU wants to promote cross-border online trade to boost economic growth and catch up with the US and Asia. It's a fast-growing area of business. The European Competition Commissioner said NBC Universal's sales curbs included restricting out-of-territory sales by licensees, restricting sales beyond allocated customers or customer groups, and restricting online sales to particular territories or to the websites of specific retailers. The EU reduced NBC Universal's fine by 30% in return for cooperation with regulators. Its film merchandising products include mugs, bags, clothing, and toys for films like Minions, Jurassic World, and Trolls.
Coming up, the EU agrees on the UK's Brexit agreement, causing British members of the European Parliament to break out in song. Find out more after the break.
I have traveled all over the world to 50 countries now, and I have never seen a production any better than this, anywhere.
It's absolutely out of this world.
It's blown away my expectations.
It was just a superior performance that truly could bridge the world through music and dance.
Startling and breathtaking. We haven't had quite an experience like that in all the years that I've lived here, so it was special for us.
I think that I learned more in this performance than I actually do in a whole week of school.
The beautiful costumes and people just float. The choreography is incredible. And the storyline, beautiful, beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I'm getting teary-eyed watching. It's very moving. You feel it. You're feeling the show.
It's like a mini vacation that transported me into another place, into another world, into another culture.
When I came here tonight, I felt very dejected about the human race, about everything going on in this world. And during the performance, I just felt now there is hope for each of us individually, as well as for all of us collectively.
Shenyun was more breathtaking, more heart-wrenchingly beautiful, more amazing than I had expected. It's very difficult to put into words, actually. You just have to come see it.
The EU ratifies the Brexit withdrawal agreement, paving the way for the UK's departure from the bloc tomorrow.
Voting overwhelmingly in its favour, European lawmakers signed off on Wednesday a deal 3.5 years in the making. That deal sees the UK saying au revoir to the bloc it's been a part of since 1973. At midnight on Friday, Brussels time, Britain will be out. It was the last vote for the UK's 73 MEPs. Afterwards, the chamber broke into singing Auld Lang Syne, a traditional Scottish song to bid farewell. The session saw MEPs both slam and celebrate the bloc in what was at times highly emotional. UK Greens MEP Molly Scott Cato.
Now is not the time to campaign to rejoin, but we must keep the dream alive, especially for young people who are overwhelmingly pro-European. I hold in my heart the knowledge that one day I will be back in this chamber celebrating our return to the heart of Europe. Thank you.
But it wasn't all words of friendship. UK MEP and architect of the Vote Leave campaign, Nigel Farage.
There's an historic battle going on now across the West, in Europe, America and elsewhere. It is globalism against populism. And you may loathe populism, but I tell you a funny thing, it's becoming very popular. And it has great benefits. No more financial contributions, no more European Court of Justice, no more common fisheries policy, no more being talked down to, no more being bullied.
But if MEPs were hoping this goodbye was an end to the years of wrangling of what the future UK-EU relationship will look like, they would be mistaken. With a transition period running until the year end, for now there won't be any changes but fresh talks, covering everything from trade to security. So for the moment, everything stays the same, just without the Union Jacks hanging in Brussels.
A German bike maker that does business with the UK ponders how Brexit will affect its business. Technobike makes electric bicycles for a popular UK company. German bike maker Technobike ponders how its business with the UK will be affected now that the UK will officially leave the European Union on Friday. Britain joined the EU in 1973 and now becomes the first country to leave. The Brexit process began after a vote in 2016.
When we started, Brexit was not foreseeable. It was before the first referendum in the British Parliament. Now, 3.5 years later, I must say it's about time a decision was made.
Technobike builds e-bikes for British bike seller Cooper. The new relationship between the EU and the UK could affect business in unforeseeable ways. While Britain is part of the EU, goods and people move freely between it and member countries like Germany. Different rules will start to come into play now that Brexit has been approved, and Britain will have to negotiate new trade and political relationships with other countries.
The consequences we will encounter are manifold, especially on the management level. Just imagine that the current customs regulations will no longer apply. This means that new customs rules for the two parties must come into place. This will have direct and imminent consequences on the price.
The UK and EU will continue to conduct business under pre-Brexit rules during a transition phase which lasts until the end of 2020. coming up, 96 puppies gather for the Puppy Bowl. The annual game is in its 16th year and broadcasts right before the Super Bowl. More on what it takes to play puppy football after the break.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
With the Super Bowl around the corner, millions are getting their plans together for the big game.
The National Retail Federation has released its annual Super Bowl survey, and nearly 194 million people are expected to tune in for the face-off between the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers. The survey has been conducted for more than a decade, and this year's spending is on track to be the highest ever for a Super Bowl, an estimated $17.2 billion. The NRF expects each viewer to spend less than $90 on average. Only 19% of viewers are planning to throw a party, and 27% are expecting to attend one. So, how do the numbers break down? 80% of Super Bowl purchases are expected to be for food and drinks. The rest will go towards team apparel, new TVs, decorations, and furniture.
San Francisco and Kansas City face off in Super Bowl 54 in Miami Gardens this Sunday. And it has become a Super Bowl Sunday tradition, gathering around the television screen and watching Team Rough and Team Fluff bumble into the end zone.
The Puppy Bowl is back for its 16th year. This year, 96 playful puppies from animal shelters from across the U.S. and around the world will run, sniff, and scratch on the football field. Puppy Bowl referee Dan Schachner said the rules are simple.
It's drag a chew toy or kick a chew toy into the end zone. Doesn't matter which end zone, doesn't matter which chew toy. As long as you're there, it counts.
Months before the Puppy Bowl airs on Animal Planet, filming is underway inside a large set in New York City. It is a gigantic production requiring casting dozens of volunteers and multiple days of shooting.
The executive producer has a wall up with the pictures of all the dogs that we're casting. We want to make sure we have a variety of different kinds of dogs because everybody loves different is their favorite breed or kind of dog.
Each puppy in the Puppy Bowl is available for adoption. One plucky puppy named Sol came from an animal shelter in Cartagena, Colombia. While she is still learning the rules of American football, her handler said Sol has other strengths.
She checked out every dog that came on the field. We like to stand in the touchdown area, wait for a pass.
For animal lovers, it is the ultimate tailgating event. The game airs at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, just before the other big game on Super Bowl Sunday.
And that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer.